what it means is we're paired with a paradigm shift of efficiency on one side and a paradigm shift of opportunity on the other side. That's where the magic happens, Matt. That is opportunity meets problem, joined with a solution that can actually make it accessible. Like that's a pretty amazing thing to be shifting the needle on right now.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Better Practice, Better Life, More Human with AI. I'm your host, Matt Halloran, and this is our executive series. We wanted to have an opportunity for all of you to get to know the people who really make the decisions on this product that is truly changing advisors' life. And today we've got Stephen Latow. He is our Chief Strategy Officer. And the idea of today, one, is for you all to get to know him a little bit better, but more importantly, to really dive into the roadmap, why we built what we built, because he has been involved really almost since not really day one, but pretty damn close to day one. So Stephen, welcome to the show.
Matt, thanks for having me on. So excited to be here and to reach our user base. I love your content, love your show, and really excited to be a part of it.
Well, I want everybody to get to know you. I had the gift of spending a whole bunch of time with you when we were at the LAMP conference together. I got to see you present, which was wonderful, watching how professional you are on stage and just how interactive you were with the audience. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about how you got to being, well, one of the executives at one of the fastest growing AI assistant companies in the United States?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So I like to say when I'm introducing myself, I was really a day two employee. And what I mean by that is Mark and Akash were day one. And at some point they were like, hey, I think we're on to something. We need to kind of start building the army. And Mark called me up and he goes, hey, can you come? We're on to something. Can you come go to market? And I was like, sure, Mark. What do you mean go to market? You mean sales, marketing, support? And he's like, yeah, do go to market. So I joined as employee number 3. At Zocks. I took our first credit card swipe. I was actually here the day that we launched and have kind of been doing go to market since then. Like it's funny to say, but what happens is the business starts growing. And so first you're like, hey, we have a number of users and we can't actually, Mark and I can't answer all the support tickets. So you hire a support team. And then you're like, hey, we're starting to have more enterprise customers. They really need a point of contact to get them through, the vendor due diligence. What KPIs are we tracking? How are we taking care of users? So you start to build an implementation team and on and on. And as we've grown, I've been fortunate to kind of be at the spearhead. To dial it back though, Zocks has really been a culmination of my entire career. So I started my career on Wall Street, worked on a trading floor for a very short stint. Pretty quickly realized that OTC bond trading, not a growing industry. And so was fortunate to have some mentors take me under their wing, and they were starting a hedge fund consulting firm called Code Red. I went there as really a technical resource. We were building out proprietary research management, portfolio attribution, and investor communication software for hedge funds, family offices, endowments. And that was my exposure to many of the initial problems that we're trying to solve at Zocks. Financial services, middle and back office workflows, very expensive and very antiquated. And our belief is that AI is going to change that. So getting back to where I came from, that company got bought by FactSet. That was really my transition into the tech world. I got to FactSet, pretty incredible company. I really admire how they've grown that business. A little bit big for where I want to be focusing. I like to get my hands dirty. I want to be working with our lighthouse customers that are doing the newest thing. So I went to Hearsay Systems, and that's where I met Mark and Akash. By the end of my tenure there, I was running product, Akash was running engineering, and Mark was the CTO. They broke off to start Zocks. I went on a little side quest to try to start a full reserve blockchain bank out of Wyoming. Oh. That's a whole story for another day. And about 2 years in, Mark called me and was like, hey, you'd been using me as a product advisor. Why don't you come over and help us as we think we're onto something here? And it's been like catching lightning in a bottle since then.
You just talked about the large enterprise, the larger clients that our organization is starting to work with. And before we hit record, one of the things that I have been so incredibly impressed with just as a observer and a participant employee here is the customization and how we've been able to do such an amazing job to change firms. Carson has talked about it. RFG has talked about it. I mean, those are the two I'm most familiar with, and I know there's a much larger list than that. But when you're looking at strategy, when you're looking at where Zocks is going to be in 3, 5, 10 years, how does that interaction and your helping build that experience with those large enterprise clients really shape the direction of where Zocks is headed?
Yeah, great question. So, our founding hypothesis for Zocks was that AI agents were going to change the unit economics of how financial services does things for their clients. And I say that in the most simple terms. What I mean is that the middle and back office workflows will use AI to go and streamline what has traditionally been a manual processy. And that will allow advisors to spend more time with their clients, to go and expand services, to reach more households. Now, what's really important about what I just said is that applies at a solo advisor independent. It applies at a mid-size RIA, and it applies to some of the largest banks and wirehouses in the world. And so when we think about our product roadmap and where we're going, we oftentimes start with the problem we're solving. So we start with what is the fastest way for us to add value? How do we measure it? How do we deploy it? And then how do we scale it? And so oftentimes that actually starts within our direct to consumer business, within our direct to advisor business. Those are the ones who are at the forefront of building agents on Claude using our MCP layer. They're the ones that feel the most pain because they have the least operational resources. And we go and figure out something that works there, and then we start bringing that to the larger enterprises, and you start to get the returns of scale with those. And so it's the first time in my career that I've been at a company that is so advisor driven. And what I mean by that is we take very seriously engaging with every single one of our customers. And it does not matter if you're a mega 10 RAA, or if you are a wirehouse, or if you are an independent. We need to hear your voice, and we need to understand kind of what are the problems that are slowing you down, and how can AI systems improve your life and improve the services you provide to your customers.
This space is moving at a blistering speed. I mean, not just what we're doing here at Zocks, but AI in general. How do you all make decisions when I built a daily briefing into my Claude. It's a,
Yep.
thing. And so every morning it tells me what's going on in the world of AI. And actually Jim helped me build it, but it's really, really nice. Like I really look forward to hearing what it needs to be. And I tweaked it a little bit over time, but so every day I'm getting updates on what's going on in the world. And in like Anthropic just rolled out as of yesterday, they rolled out 10 AI agents for financial services. OpenAI just did it with 12 agents last week. How do you all stay true and not chase the shiny rabbit or chase that squirrel because there's so many freaking squirrels?
Yeah, it's such a good point. So, I think it's important to realize like how unique this time is. If we think about the advisory market, they basically got CRM into the 90s, planning in the early 2010s, and like not much else over the last 40 years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the big things we were worried about, frankly, when we started the market or it started Zox is how quickly is this market going to be able to adopt this software?
Yeah.
And what we've seen, and this is you look at the Kitches map and it's like tripled since we started Zox, right? It is actually like it has proved a great advantage to adoption that this market has been so underserved from a technology perspective that they were chomping at the bit to go and get the operational efficiencies that AI provides. So what does that mean? Being more direct to your question, how do we go and filter down to what opportunities do we invest in versus what ones do we let flow by us? And really getting back to my earlier point, it starts with the solo advisor. It starts with going and talking to our customers and understanding, hey, what are the things that are slowing you down? When you think about where you want your business to be in 5, 10, 15 years, magic wand it. What does that look like? And a lot of them will say, I would love to be spending less time on operational workflows. I would love to be training junior advisors to take over the business so I'm not getting to a transition point where I'm forced to sell my book. These are people that I care deeply about. And so what is that transition planning? And they've never really had the technical solutions to be able to realistically execute those operational challenges. And now that world has opened up. And so we always get back to first principles, Matt. We're back to what is the problem we're solving? Why does it matter? And why are we uniquely suited to solve that problem? Those are the three questions that on our executive team we're asking over and over and over again. And it does require a lot of hard no's. Like it requires us to make trade-offs.
Yeah. I remember when I first got into financial services in 2006, we did everything over the phone and I didn't really know a lot about financial services. So, I was the only coach at Carson who had two monitors.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, what do you need two monitors for? Us like, cause Investopedia is open on this monitor. I don't know what the heck these people are talking about. And I remember we had a coaches team meeting which we did every week. And we were sitting down and my question was, how come none of these pieces of tech talk to each other? And they all just laughed. Oh, that's never going to happen. You know, they're all programmed differently and all of this stuff. And now I'm starting to see, as I'm diving more deeply into our product, for those of you who haven't really gone to the Zocks Academy and taken Zocks 101, it is a game changer in understanding really how our system works and how easy it is to plug your stuff in. And I was watching the integrations presentation and what that can do and how it's two-way and it will pull this way and that way. And we've really, and again, I like saying this because it's not an approved Zocks talking point, but it's like an Oreo cookie, like the advisors here and their techs here, and we're the yummy stuff in the middle that makes the cookie work. Because that's the layer that we've had. When you guys built this, was that the Oreo cookie sort of mantra you had, or were you guys just like, oh my God, there's just this really big opportunity. Let's just see how to solve it. Which direction was that?
So I can't say that Oreo cookie was the metaphor that we used, though I do like it, and I am 1,000% going to steal that and take full credit for it.
Yay!
But what we saw is everyone has seen the hub and spokes diagram. You have your CRM or your data warehouse at the middle, and you have all of these point solutions that feed off of that. And what the hub and spokes model does not articulate is each one of those lines is actually a person or a group of people that are responsible for copying and pasting the same data between places. Well, what happens when a person is in charge of that? Of course you get data loss. Oh. And so what we saw is it's actually like a leaky bucket where every single time the data needs to transfer, you're losing a single data point. It might be that beneficiary's name. It might be what that wedding anniversary is. It might be whatever it is. And so what happens over time is that central record of the client gets diluted. Why does that matter? It means that you cannot programmatically execute workflows on the data when you have data loss. And so that is what we're trying to solve. How can we keep client profiles up to date? And how can we make it very, very easy for consumer systems to interact with our data? Because that is solving, back to the advisor, that problem number one is my operational workflows are inefficient and it causes client pain. So, Oreo cookie, hub and spokes model breaking, kind of the same thing.
Well, I've stolen a story from Rex, one of our salespeople here. I've totally made my own. So you're more than welcome to do whatever you'd like with that. Well, so with that, one of the things that I always used to, when I was a consultant, one of the things that separated me from other consultants is I would do an on-site intensive for a day and a half with the office and the team where I would look at everything. I mean, I was looking at carpet, walls, what was on the walls, what the experience was like when you walked in, because nobody really paid attention to that. They're like, oh, well, that painting's there. I was like, why?
You're making me feel insecure about my office setup right now, Matt.
Well, but with that, so yeah, we can talk about that later. But with that, one of the things that always would come out was I need them to be perfect, or I'm expecting perfection from my operations team. And that was like one of the big things, Stephen, I go toe to toe with these advisors. First off, there's a totally unrealistic expectation because you don't have all of the infrastructure in place to be able to transfer field to field data accurately, because there is a human involved. Humans get sick. Humans make mistakes. Humans sneeze and hit a key, right? Those are the sorts of things that I think AI can really solve. But when you're looking at the solve, when an advising office does implement a system like ours, what do you see is the difference in service.
Yep. So this is the crux of what the conversation needs to be. So I'm so glad you're asking about this, because there's really two different things that are related that are going on. The first one is, the advisory market has been worried about fee compression since I've been a member of it, at least the last 10 years. So probably a lot longer than that. What's really happening is fees aren't getting compressed, but service expansion is becoming the norm. So advisors now, they are not only money managers. They are also tax advisors. They are also estate planners. They are also financial therapists. And what does that mean? It means that they need to be able to play a much more complicated role in their clients' lives to stay competitive. And the advisors that are doing well and growing their business are effectively growing it like we think of as a tech company. How are we solving problems for our clients? Now, getting back to your original point, where does that break down? Well, that takes creativity. It takes the ability to try and iterate, and it takes understanding where we're heading to. What you described was, how do we layer on operational efficiency through manpower and perfection? And the people that you hire to do that are very different than the people that you hire to create
Yeah.
new lines of business. And this is
Yeah.
the number one thing I am excited about, is advisors coming to me and saying, hey, can you help me write a JD for someone that thinks creatively and wants to build on these AI systems, because they see it, they see what's happening, and they're trying to capture that. And so that assistant role, that ops role, is changing from an executor where perfection means figuring out how to do 10% more of the same thing faster with higher data quality each year, into what is the right way to do this? How do we prioritize resources? What are we hearing from our clients, and how do we serve them better? And that shift is really, really exciting to be a part of.
Yeah. Early on, when I was focusing more on insurance agents, there was a system called Finder, Binder, Minder, Grinder, and so the primary advisor, the agent, was the person who was the finder, right? They were the rainmaker, and then you had the binder, the somebody who solidified the relationships, the minder who maintained those relationships, and then the grinder was the person who did all the paperwork, right?
Yep.
And we're able to take almost the entire grinder role out through just having real conversations. And I'm hearing that the first conference I went to, gosh, I've told the story a bunch already on the show, but I just love this so much. We were at the wealth.com event, which is the first event I went to as a Zocks employee. And this lady came up and she said, Zocks changed my life. And I'm looking around because I was with two very seasoned people, Too Good and Joe here. And I thought they were playing a prank on me. All right. I mean, I've been a salesperson for a long time. I mean, a little bit of hazing to the new guys, not a problem. And they didn't show up. And I'm like, what's going on? And so, oh my gosh, she was an operations person.
Yes.
And I was like, so, okay, I naturally assumed she was the owner because she was at the wealth.com event. No, she said, I'm the chief operations officer for a large firm. And she's like, Matt, I'm not chasing anybody anymore to get the notes in, to do the tasks. But more importantly, my operations team now is actually able to lean more into really what they love to do, which is interacting with the clients. And Stephen, I can't thank you guys enough. As somebody who's wildly passionate about financial services, really understand how important our advisors are in our lives and how life-changing great financial advice can truly be, that you guys have created something that really allows now for the Pareto principle. It was 70% of kids said 70% of advisors' time is spent on non-client stuff. But, the 80-20 rule, now we're able to flip that. Could you imagine, and you guys do, that they're spending 70% of their time actually helping clients?
Well, and what happens, right, is when you open up capacity where you are not constantly dying under the weight of all of the inbound and reactive things, you can think creatively. There's been a number of scientific studies about this, that people need time and space to be able to think creatively, to go and start something new. If you don't have that time and space, you will keep doing exactly what you're doing and layering on more and more efficiency to that thing. And so really what AI has driven is creation of that time and space. And so it's challenging challenging this whole market to think. I always think of like an x-axis where you have like creative versus routine and time sensitivity on the other axis, and it's letting them operate up in that top quadrant where it's like, hey, I see a new opportunity. It's going to take some creative problem solving. We actually can step back with our team and say, what would it look like to do this? Should we do it? Are we ready to do it? Do we have the systems to do it? And that just wasn't the mode that this industry was operating in 5-10 years ago. And I think it's really not exaggerating to say it's a paradigm shift, and it's why we get those testimonials.
I will say this for as long as you guys will allow me to say this and work here, and I'll say it even if I'm not here, to be honest. I think AI is the biggest shift in financial services since modern portfolio theory, because it fundamentally changed how advisors looked at investing, right? In long-term investing sort of things, financial planning, so on and so forth. And now we've got this ability to systematize things that people have always wanted to systematize. But that really does beg a deeper question. You hinted on this earlier in the show, but the hiring and training and retention and pass down to team members has always been a big issue. Because the advisors, like we were just talking about what it's like to work here, right? Where it's like, you had said it's like building a sandcastle in high tide, right? Where you're moving stuff so fast, and it needs to be moved and you're making progress, but a lot of times it still feels like, the water keeps getting in the hole. Advisors feel that way. Any entrepreneur feels that way. How can Zocks, or what is your vision, in the future for what our system or systems like ours can do for those issues?
Yeah, do you mean as far as like the prioritization of the inbound requests, or kind of when you say issue, do you mean just the universe of all the problems to solve?
I'm asking you to solve the problems of the universe, brother. I mean, we're going to go big on this. So you're a big thinker. So I want you to kind of be expansive with that, please.
Yeah, so I think there's two things that it allows for. The first is this market has struggled to figure out a profitable way to serve new entrants into the industry.
Yeah.
I talk about this ad nauseum. My parents were blue collar. We had a great upbringing, but we were not wealthy, and they didn't understand the financial implications of decisions. For all intents and purposes, I did not go into college with a strong understanding of what it meant to take out $100,000 in debt. This is a financial literacy question. And we have advisors now that when we first started, they did not have the time to reach out to the next generation and start with something accessible there of, hey, we want to engage you. And yeah, in 5 years, it might make sense for us to do business together. But right now, it's actually just financial education. That was never an opportunity. And so what we're seeing is, when I was describing those different services that advisors can take on, one of them is, how do we reach the next generation? What does a mass affluent product offering look like? Turns out it's quite different than the traditional AUM model. Getting back to that axes, we're in the creative zone here. And so one of the amazing things that AI is doing is it is allowing advisors to actually expand their business and reach people that have traditionally not been served by this market. Now, the key linchpin to why this is happening is because the system integrations are so much easier. One of the big problems traditionally is the planning software you would use for an ultra high net worth client, and the resources you needed and the level of detail and the legal support is very, very different than a recent college grad. And an advisor's like, I can barely get my data to talk to each other for my current client base. So now, because AI is allowing for the seamless integration of those data sets, they are able to envision, okay, this is the workflow that our junior advisor is going to work on. Maybe it's starting with the beneficiaries, with the next generation of our current clients, but you can imagine it expanding from there. So that's the first thing from the universe, is actually serving more people. The second thing, and this is key, is we've all heard the McKinsey statistics. We do not have enough new financial advisors. They estimate 100,000 person deficit over the next 10 years. That means that just to serve the current market, we need to 100% increase the efficiency of our current advisors. Now, my little spidey sense tells me that, hey, if we're actually able to shift how these businesses grow, it's going to become a lot more attractive for new entrants to enter that market. And that will go and fill some of the vacuum as well. But what it means is we're paired with a paradigm shift of efficiency on one side and a paradigm shift of opportunity on the other side. That's where the magic happens, Matt. That is opportunity meets problem, joined with a solution that can actually make it accessible. Like that's a pretty amazing thing to be shifting the needle on right now.
I also love the fact that advisors can have junior advisors or associate wealth advisors in the meetings, participating in the meetings instead of just passively taking notes, because that was the model, the training model. Hell, I used to teach that, right?
Right.
Or having an FTE in every meeting with you.
Yep.
Now they can go ahead and do other things. But I really do believe that the model that we're living under currently, which is the AUM model, I think that is fundamentally going to change. There have been many arguments out there. I'm not going to dive into it today, but the idea that a newer advisor can come in, their whole sales focus is going to be on the beneficiaries, which, by the way, is pretty low hanging fruit if you've been doing even a moderately good job, and being able to offer them a fee-based monthly fee sort of Netflix model for financial advice. Now, all of a sudden, you're billing them in a way that makes sense. They're paying for something that they get value, and you're not having to go ahead and do because you don't need to, unless you're working with like Henry's, right? High earning, not rich yet, those sorts of people. That's not who most of our advisors are working with. Now, my favorite question for you is this. And I love asking this question at the end of every single solitary show because it's a Columbo-esque question. So for those of you who don't know the show Columbo, and it's really freaking old, it was even before my times. So Columbo was a detective, and he'd be interrogating somebody, then he'd walk out, and before he hit the door, he'd say, because then they let their guard down. He would grab the door and he'd say, "I have one more question for you." And all of a sudden, most of the time, Stephen, I don't know if you ever watched the show, they freaking spilled the beans. So here's the beans I'm looking for you to spill, which is, what question should I have asked you that I didn't?
I think the number one question that is important for everyone to be thinking about is, how is the accessibility of data going to have second, third, and fourth level ramifications for this business? And where my mind's going is, you worked as a coach with Carson. You were going and working with advisors on how to optimize their practice. In that model, you were inherently dependent on what the advisor viewed, what their perception was of their practice.
Yep.
Let me tell you, it is human nature that we are not always as self-aware as we might think that we are,
Yeah.
which means that you are coaching them from a good place, but off of a bad set of data. This is the same thing as the servicing problems we were talking about earlier, where you're not actually addressing the core problem. And so with our tool, what advisors can see, and this is the lowest hanging fruit, is, did you engage both of the people in the room? If you're talking to a couple, did you answer both of their questions? How long did you speak versus how long did they speak? Did you ask questions or did you just provide answers? And what were the topics that they responded to either positively or negatively? That gives an objective framework to start from. And what that means is you actually can make change, because the first thing in making change is you have to know what you're trying to change and why, and you have to have accurate data. And so, and that isn't just for coaching, it's across everything. AI is uniquely good at getting systems that were not purpose-built to integrate together to talk to each other. And what that means is, from a coaching perspective, from a training perspective, from a new business opportunity analysis, from an organic growth perspective, even talking about that low-hanging fruit of beneficiaries, we know this, backed up by data, that when advisors use our cross-client queries, they overestimate how much they have engaged with their clients' next generation. They systematically think, oh yeah, I know Joe's kids, I know Matt's kids, we talked maybe 9 months ago, and you go and run the query and it says, actually, you met them 4 years ago, they were 12 at the time, they're now preparing for college, probably their mindset has shifted. And that data's never existed before, and we've never had the time to action it. And every conference I go to, it's funny, it's like that phrase, like, the more things change, the more they stay the same. It all gets back to the data. What are you doing to streamline your data, and how are you using that to make trade-off decisions, just like we do here at Zocks?
Yeah. I talk a lot about the trade-off law. And the trade-off law in my world is for everything you want in life, you have to be willing to give up something proportionate to that want. And there's 5 things you can give up: time, talents, treasures, relationships, and control. For everything you want that is going to be different, you have to be willing to give up one of those 5 things. And for a lot of advisors, Stephen, control is something that they're still having issues with by turning over. And it's not just the advisors, it's the operations people turning the control over this data and the control of this data to a system like ours. What would you say to them, those people who are still hesitant?
This resonates with me. We are growing quite quickly. We've added 100 new employees in the last year. So letting go of control is something that I am very familiar with right now. And the key to that is you want to seed decision making without seeding visibility. And there's 2 things that need to happen there. One is, do you feel confident that you will be able to see if things are going off the rails? And so whether it's using our system to go and scorecard the conversations where the first time your junior advisor is engaging directly, you can actually debrief it with a true set of what happened in the conversation, or it's something else. Like, no one likes, it's not binary. You can't go from I owned 100% to now I have 0 visibility. So you have to figure out the roadmap to get there. And the second is being thoughtful about what are the one-way doors that are out there. I talk about this all the time with my team. Is my job is not to tell you which doors to go through. My job is to make sure that when you are going to go through a one-way door, a door that you cannot get back from, that I see it, I flag it, and we talk about it before it happens. It's no different for any business owner. So you have to have a framework in your mind of what are the one-way doors, what are the two-way doors. As you let go of control, people are going to do things differently than you would have done it, and you need a system for knowing which one they're going through, and then a framework to objectively talk about it. If you have those 2 things, letting go of control is easy. It just takes time.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, if people want to know a little bit more about who you are and what you do, where can they go? I know that you do a lot of speaking. Is there you want them to follow you somewhere? What's the best thing for them to do?
Yeah, I'm most active on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is my name. The great thing about having a made-up last name is that no one else has it, so I'm easy to find. I'm also very much on the conference circuit, so I will be at Wealth Management Edge. I'll be at Future Proof. I'll be at a number of the custodian and broker-dealer conferences. Please reach out beforehand, whether it's over LinkedIn or email. Would love to meet up and hear from current users, future users, people that are just curious about how we're building the business. Always happy to engage.
And we would really love for you to make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. But more importantly, just click the share button, because as we're diving through this executive series and as this podcast gets launched, it's really, really good. You're going to hear things on this show that you're like, oh, crap, Jane needs to know that. Or, man, I just talked to Jimmy about this yesterday. And it's super easy to do. It's very, very helpful for us to go ahead and build our audience, which is what we're looking for, because really the idea here is we talked a lot today about building a better practice, a more efficient practice, but also that this will help you have a better life. So when you're looking at your legacy, when you're looking at your time, and you're looking at really what you're going to be focused on from here on out, things change. When you're given 10 plus hours back in your week, every week, my ask of all of you is to do one thing, and one thing very simply: peel off an hour and do something that's good for you. Work on yourself spiritually, work on yourself mentally, start going to see a therapist and deal with some of those issues you've been dragging around for 50 years. Maybe try to be a better spouse, maybe try to be a better parent, even if that's to your dog or cat. So for Stephen, this is Matt Halloran, and we'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon.